Well, hello everyone, and I know what you must be thinking. Why am I looking at an upside down seal of the President of the United States? Well, this is not a distress signal, although many of you may particularly feel that way. This video is about the top 9 ineffective presidents, in my view, of the United States. Now, as you are aware, there have been 45 men at this point who have ascended to the presidency of the United States of America. And most of them, through my research, have done an okay to exceptional job. Well, there are a few, in my view, who were ineffective in their job. Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't have done a job, but decisions that they made or circumstances prevented them from really doing okay in their particular role. And I based this off of 5 criteria. 1, the decisions that they've made led to some type of national crisis. Number 2, they lost control of their party. Number 3, they were unable to get things done through Congress. Number 4, they lost the support of the public. And number 5, it had to be a finished term, because I know many of you will be thinking, well, Trump hasn't done that much. How come he isn't going to be on this list? And I just thought it was unfair to make an assessment on his term that has not yet been completed, or we don't even know if he's going to be reelected. So it's not fair to make an assessment on how effective his presidency is if it isn't completed yet. And therefore, using those 5 factors, I have come up with the following top 9 or bottom 9, if you want to call it that, list of presidents who, in my view, were most ineffective. And now we are going to start with number 9. And number 9 president, as I would like to say, is Gerald Ford. Now, Gerald Ford is the 38th president of the United States, and he has the distinct honor of serving both as president and vice president without being elected by the Electoral College. He was selected after Richard Nixon was elected, and he ascended to the presidency once Richard Nixon was resigned. Now, some accomplishments in this regard have been that he signed the Helsinki Accords, which was to help foster better relations with the communist nations, or in retrospect, the Soviet Union. He faced growing inflation and recession, which is economic problems. He pardoned Richard Nixon. Now, this was a very controversial decision at the time, because Richard Nixon, due to the Watergate scandal, was not well liked, and he was on the verge of not only being impeached, but actually being convicted of his crimes and being removed from office. And facing those prospects, Richard Nixon decided to resign. But since he still did break federal law, he was still open for prosecution. And Gerald Ford made the decision to pardon Richard Nixon, because the president has the ability to pardon. And that was a very, very controversial decision. And it kind of soured public opinion for Mr. Ford during his presidency. And that hits on one of my tenets, that he started to lose public support because of that decision. But another issue that led to him being an ineffective president was that he did not know how to handle the economy. And part of that, in my view, is that the Republican Party was going through a transition. It was starting to become a more conservative party, and when you have conservative elements, you simply, one of the tenets that you believe that the government should not be involved in any factors of life, and that has plus and minuses. But usually, when it comes to national security, my review of history has often led me to believe that it requires a strong federal government. And he did, or Mr. Ford did do that initially, but at a certain point, instead of saying, for example, in order to, his first plan was to get Americans to stop spending and consumption, which was part of the WIN initiative, but it never went further than that. It wasn't any official legislation or anything. It was just, okay, please Americans stop spending and doing consumption. He had plans to tax the wealthy, but at some point the decision was made, instead of going for a tax increase, he decided for a tax reduction, which made the deficit even worse. So that contributed, and the economy never really got better, because into the Jimmy Carter era presidency, the economy got even worse. He allowed the North Vietnamese army to invade South Vietnam. Now, this would later factor on in him losing the confidence, more or less, to a certain extent, of the Republican Party. But America at this point in time was tired of the Vietnam War. And so when a truce was made between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, the United States eventually, made a decision that they were no longer going to contribute any form of military aid toward the country. The North Vietnamese therefore decided, okay, we're just going to take over the whole country. And when South Vietnam asked the United States for help, the Congress of the United States said, no, we are done with this. And therefore, this is really not a fault of him. But this decision did lead to concerns that the United States might lose influence in the region, which was part of the reason why they entered into the Vietnam conflict to begin with. But these type of decisions ultimately led to him losing the confidence of his party, in the sense that he had a primary challenge. Now, one of the things that I learned throughout history is that if a president has a primary challenge, normally or usually that president will lose, because it shows that the party isn't united. And his primary challenge was in the form of a California governor named Ronald Reagan. For those history buffs out there, you will know that Ronald Reagan eventually ascends to the presidency. And that was because the Republican Party was changing. It was becoming a more conservative party. And the party, or one of the tenets of the conservative movement during that time, was strong national security. So the United States withdrawing from Vietnam, the United States working or trying to improve relations with the communist countries, the United States handing over the rights to the Panama Canal, all that bothered very influential people in the conservative movement, and therefore Ronald Reagan decided to issue a primary challenge to Gerald Ford. Now, Gerald Ford was able to win the Republican nomination, but eventually he would lose the election to the Georgia governor, Jimmy Carter. And therefore, he remains one of the few presidents who was able to ascend to the presidency without being elected by the public. But he was able to do, for the most part, what he wanted to do. But he was an ineffective president, although he's a strong number 9 for a reason, because while he was able to do things that he wanted to do, he did lose the faith of his party for the most part. He did lose the confidence of the American people for his pardoning of Richard Nixon. And therefore, because of these tenets, he comes in at number 9 of the top 9 list of the most ineffective presidents. Stay tuned for number 8. You will probably, if you would like to take a guess, please leave that in the comments. I hope you like this little summary of Gerald Ford, and please like and subscribe.